Hello. Nice to meet y'all. We're back. I see. I'm busy again. That's the reason why this video is going to be posted maybe in Thursday or maybe in Friday. I'm so busy right now, and that's the reason why. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Touch my microphone. That's the reason why my schedule is messed up. So today we're reacting to how the war in Europe influenced conflict in Asia. Pacific War episode 0.6. We're almost the end of the preload, and after this we're going to episode 3 and continuing from episode 1 and episode 2. So I wrote notes, and yes, World War II in Asia. So I gave myself two questions. How did World War II affect Asia? And my answer here is there are severe shortages of food and goods affected in almost all Southeast Asians, and many lived in fear of draconian military rule. So yes, so shortages of food and goods and military rule, because that sometimes ends up in dictatorship, and the Philippines has one of them. So, and next, the second question is what caused the war in Asia? And we all know the war officially started in 1937 when Japan launched an invasion on the rest of China. We learned that from last video. Really? Last video? Yes, last video. We learned about China at war. And today, it's about how the war in Europe influenced conflict in Asia. So coming back like maybe 4 weeks ago, I was watching a documentary about Hideki Tojo, and the documentary is named Evolution of Evil. You guys have to check that out if you're interested about dictators. And that documentary tells the story from Hideki Tojo's childhood and his demise. So I'm gonna start not okay, you know what, I'm just gonna cut this out and I'm gonna start my recording. So like and subscribe. Here we go. I'm sorry everybody, I'm kind of rusty because it's been a while since the last time I recorded a video, and it's busy. Okay, I'm busy, school and other crap too. So I'm gonna start recording. Okay, wow, hold on, I'm sorry folks. Okay, is it? Oh my goodness. There we go. The recording started. What? I'm confused as hell. What the hell's happening? Okay, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm kind of rusty. It's been a while since I recorded a video, and my freaking... Oh, there we go. Okay, now. Audio? Okay, let's go.
For 4 long years, Europe had been devastated during the First World War, leaving almost 30 million casualties, along with many more dying of famines and disease. As such, the world had...
The most notable disease in World War I was the Spanish flu. And there's theories where it started, and there's a lot of theories about where that flu started. And I actually saw a video or a series made by Extra Credits about the Spanish flu, and I want to react to that. Anyway,
suffered enough, so another major conflict like that one was strictly avoided by the main Western powers. But in the 30s, All of this would change with the rise of fascism and Nazism in Italy and Germany. While the war between Japan and China intensifies and reaches a stalemate in 1939, a new conflict is brewing in Europe. A conflict that is destined to change the course of history.
Oh, I forgot. Germany actually just drove inside Austria and just easily took over Austria. That's the reason why Austria isn't in this map right now.
Join us as we take a look at the start of the Second World War and the effects it had on the Japanese Empire and the United States.
First of all, for me, watching that documentary about Hideki Tojo was actually influenced by German militarism, and he wanted Japan to have the same thing. So yeah.
By the way, don't forget to check out our podcast on the Pacific War. It has all the episodes in a long-form format with extra details. The link is in the description. Snacking is...
Okay, so I knew it. There's going to be an ad. I'm sorry, I'm going to skip the ad.
And save up to $47 on your own authentic Japanese subscription box from Boxu.
Boxu? 1941 to 1945. War in Europe. Episode 0.6. Ooh, okay.
At the end of the Great War, the balance of power was drastically changed with the downfall of the German Empire and the rise of the United States as a world power. Because of the humiliating Treaty of Versailles, the newborn Weimar Republic was in a very difficult situation at the start of the Roaring Twenties, having to pay immense war reparations to their former enemies, and suffering a heavy military restriction upon its armed forces. Both of these problems would then lead to hyperinflation and economic crisis, as well as a lack of unity and political extremism plaguing the nation.
Like, one of them is communism, and in the future, Nazism. Yes, we learned all about Germany in this time period in the oversimplified video. So yeah.
The Germans also lost a big portion of their homeland and all of its overseas territories, giving rise to a national sense of irredentism and revanchism, which would be key to the rise of ultranationalism in the country.
Ultranationalism, yeah.
Concurrently, the Treaty of Versailles would also fail to concede to the Kingdom of Italy all of the territories that they had been promised for their participation in the war. This was seen as a great humiliation by the Italian nationalists, leaving the way open for the rise to power of Benito Mussolini.
Okay, yes, because they were expecting to get more territories. They wanted this part of, like, almost some part of Croatia and some part of Bosnia. They wanted those territories, but they got just few. So yeah, and that's the reason why there's this guy Benito Mussolini that rose to power. Fascism.
And his fascist movement. From 1922 to 1934, Mussolini would go on to impose a totalitarian rule and build a solid groundwork for his dictatorship and his future expansionist prospects.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. This is Julius Caesar. Is it Julius Caesar? Maybe for me it's still Caesar.
Meanwhile, in Germany, the far-right National Socialist German Workers' Party rose to prominence under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, with ultranationalism, radical anti-Semitism and anti-Bolshevism, as well as a complete rejection of the Treaty of Versailles as their core principles. Amid the political chaos of the Weimar Republic and the deterioration of the economy due to the Great Depression, Hitler's oratory skills, promising a strong central government, a racial cleansing, and an economic recovery, would earn immense support for the Nazi Party in the Reichstag. In 1932, the Nazis thus won the national elections and subsequently started a campaign of political pressure and intimidation against the other parties.
Yes, they've won the election. Adolf Hitler became a chancellor, and he only intimidated the other parties when the Reichstag fire happened, and he quickly made like this, I don't know what you call that, I forgot what you call. He quickly made this paper with giving the Nazi party all of the military power and yeah, military control. And yeah, like President Hindenburg just signed that, but not, I don't know, does it call petition? No, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, please.
That would allow Hitler to establish a dictatorship and to become Führer by 1934.
When
Hitler would
died.
then start a massive rearmament program, directly repudiating the Treaty of Versailles and remilitarizing the Rhineland by 1936.
Yeah.
It's at this point that the mutual hatred for Bolshevism prompted the Japanese Empire and Nazi Germany to sign the Anti-Comintern Pact, directed against the Communist International and the Soviet Union in.
Yeah. The remilitarizing the Rhineland, France, like the Allies didn't do anything and they just let him be. So yeah, he was lucky. For me, it was lucky. But what if the Allies like got concerned about that, so and made some changes? What if? Just a what if. The Anti-Comintern Pact, yes, the hatred of communism, and it's like a alliance.
Particular. Japan hoped that this would become a military alliance against the Soviets, but after Hitler surprised them by signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Stalin, this was not an option anymore. Relations between Germany and Italy also improved during this period, resulting in the creation of the Berlin-Rome Axis. As the United Kingdom and France couldn't contain the rise of Nazi Germany, and as they didn't want a Second World War that would be even more devastating for their empires.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
An approach.
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot. Italy controlled Libya at this period.
Nazi Germany, and as they didn't want a Second World War that would be even more devastating for their empires, an approach of appeasement was taken towards German and Italian aggression. In this way, Austria, Memel and the Sudetenland were annexed, and Ethiopia, Albania and Czechoslovakia were invaded by the Axis powers without any retaliation. Wary of the growing conflict that was brewing in Europe, the Congress of the United States passed a series of neutrality acts in the 30s that promoted isolationism and non-interventionism, trying to assure that the US wouldn't be entangled in European affairs yet again. And as the Axis powers were becoming ever more aggressive, the UK and France had no other choice but to prepare for war, guaranteeing the independence of Poland, Romania and Greece.
Yeah, the reason why the America intervened in World War II, because they were provoked by Japan's attack in Pearl Harbor, and even though the attack in Pearl Harbor was the starting point of the Pacific War, there were tensions before that. So yeah.
In 1939, in response, Germany and Italy formalized their own alliance with the Pact of Steel. Thus, war was now inevitable. Meanwhile, in China, after 2 years of bloody fighting, the Chinese were completely demoralized, and the Japanese continued to press their advantage. In February, Hainan Island fell to the Japanese, hoping to use it as a base for future naval invasions and bombing operations in southern China. Furthermore, the long Nanchang campaign concluded with the occupation of the city by early May, and the consolidation of their presence in the Jiangxi and Hunan regions. At the same time, conflicts with the UK would erupt because of the foreign aid that was flowing to China through Hong Kong and Indochina, consequently straining British-Japanese relations. But Japanese momentum would be interrupted by the escalation of border conflicts with the Soviet Union. As we've already covered, a big portion of the IJA command desired war with the Russians with the objective of destroying communism and securing the resources of Siberia. This expansionist doctrine, known as Hokushinron, drove Tokyo to sign the Anti-Comintern Pact in 1936, thus threatening the position of the Soviet Union in the east. But while the Soviets continued to reinforce their Manchurian border due to the threat that was posed by the Japanese Empire, the Kwantung Army saw some of their most elite forces redirected to fight in the ongoing war with China, leaving them in a weaker state along the border. Already in 1938, the Japanese had been defeated at the Battle of Lake Khasan, and the humiliation of this defeat prompted them to intensify a border conflict with the Mongolian People's Republic, a puppet state under the Soviets. In the resulting Nomonhan incident, the Kwantung Army was defeated yet again, and the plans for a northward expansion were finally revised due to the Soviet strength in the region. If you want a more in-depth coverage of this incident, don't forget to check out our video on the Battle of Khalkhin Gol. We know you'll absolutely love it. What is important from this battle is that the Hokushinron was finally dropped in favor of the Nanshinron, a doctrine backed by the IJN that sponsored a southward expansion into the rich and strategic regions of Southeast Asia.
Yeah, because attacking the Soviet Union is going to be a huge mistake. We all know that it's in the history. Napoleon tried it, failed. Yeah, and this is like a period. I'm not saying yes, Adolf Hitler did it too, but Adolf Hitler is obviously in here. But I forgot who is the king. Can you guys comment down below what's the name of the king of Sweden? King of Sweden. Was it King Charles? No. The king of Sweden. He tried to invade Russia, but got pushed back, and that's the start of their downfall. And their king was actually killed in one battle. I forgot who was the king in Sweden that was brought to power in a very young age, and he came out to be like a military man. He's not really good diplomatic king. He's more to like a war.
And the Pacific Islands. Concurrently, the Japanese launched a new offensive directed against the cities of Suishan and Shaoyang after their successful capture of Wuhan. Although Shaoyang had been captured by early May, the NRA managed to stop the Japanese advance towards Suishan at the Tongbai mountain ranges. The success in the defense of Suishan gave confidence to the NRA to counterattack Shaoyang, expelling the Japanese divisions that held the town by the end of the month.
Oh my god. We can see in those battles that the Chinese are getting some victories, even though it's not that much and doesn't really affect the war. But hey, victory is a victory. Hold on, I'm sorry, I muted the ad.
Taking advantage of this successful defense and the Japanese difficulties at the Manchurian border, Chiang Kai-shek would continue to build up the military capabilities of the NRA army and would start to contemplate a possible major counteroffensive. Returning to Europe, the growing tensions between the Allies and the Axis would culminate on September 1st with the German invasion of Poland, triggering the start of the Second World War. On September 27th, Warsaw fell to the Germans, and the last elements of the Polish army surrendered by October 6th. The Germans would then occupy western and central Poland, preparing themselves for a general offensive against France, while the Soviets occupied eastern Poland, as per the agreement between Molotov and Ribbentrop.
Yeah, Molotov and Ribbentrop. This is another what if. Like, what if the Soviet Union joined the Axis? That will not happen. That's impossible because of Hitler's hatred towards the Soviet Union and communism. But what if the Soviet Union joined the Axis? So there's three superpowers teaming up to just invade and conquer. Hey.
And back in China,
And the war would be different if the Soviet Union joined the Axis powers. Because after World War II, post World War II was actually the Cold War. Like America versus the Soviet Union. And even though they hadn't fought a war, they just supported countries who are like, there's a huge revolution, a communist revolution, and yeah, they, if there's, give an example like Vietnam, China supported North Vietnam while South Vietnam was being supported by the US. So yeah.
the Japanese wanted to restore morale after their recent defeats and the general stalemate on the Chinese front, so they started a new offensive south of the Yangtze River, aimed at the major city of Changsha. The campaign was bloody, but General Shi Yue cunningly started to execute magnetic warfare, in which the advancing Japanese soldiers were attracted to ambushes, flanking attacks and encirclements, thus inflicting heavy casualties on the IJA. The loss of life finally forced the Japanese to withdraw across the Liaodao River by late September, making Changsha the first major city to successfully repel Japanese advances, and Xue would press his advantage with a counterattack that decimated the retreating invaders. By October 10th, the success of Xue's counteroffensive meant that the Chinese had recovered much of Hunan, southern Hubei, and northern Jiangxi. Nonetheless, another Japanese offensive in November was highly successful at occupying South Guangxi and its capital Nanning, thus cutting off Chongqing from the ocean and effectively severing foreign aid to China's war effort via the sea. Now Indochina, the Burma Road and the Hump were the only remaining effective trade routes. But at the same time, Chiang's winter offensive was finally ready to be launched. The NRA planned to conduct multiple attacks on all fronts to tie down the Japanese forces and prevent them from preparing new offensives. In late November, the winter offensive commenced, and the Japanese braced themselves to withstand the NRA onslaught, seeing major fighting until late March 1940. In the north, despite tying down and causing heavy damage to Japanese forces, the objective of seizing all major towns in southern Shanxi was not met, and thus the operation was seen as a failure. Yet the Japanese invasion of West Suiyuan and Ningxia was also defeated by warlord Ma Hongbin and his Hui Muslim troops, forcing the invaders back to the town of Baotou during the Battle of Wuyuan. Meanwhile in central China, Japanese soldiers were successfully tied down south of the Yangtze River with relentless attacks, although the objective of recuperating Nanchang and Wuchang didn't come to fruition. While north of the Yangtze, Chinese forces would be completely defeated by the Japanese defenders, suffering heavy casualties. And in the south, the Japanese advance at South Guangxi and Yunnan was finally stopped, and a counterattack by General Bai Chongxi managed to recapture the cities of Longshan and Yingde, getting near Guangzhou. While the NRA failed to meet most of their prime objectives, overall, the winter offensive was very successful at cutting down Japanese strength in China, inflicting more than 20,000 casualties on the invaders.
But this war in China, the second Sino-Japanese war, it's a stalemate. Like, Japan is getting this part of China, but if they try to start an offensive through China, China is gonna push them back over the places they were before. So it's like a stalemate. And we all know a stalemate can lead to negotiation or a miracle / opportunity. Yes, I said that last video. So if you hadn't seen that last video, check it out in the description down below.
It also demonstrated to the British and Americans that the KMT were capable of tying down the Japanese, thwarting them from aiding Nazi Germany or Fascist Italy. From this point on, Britain and America began loaning greater amounts of money to the Chinese war effort. At the same time that the Winter Offensive was ending, Nazi Germany was preparing for their major offensive against France. But first, the Nazis would invade Denmark and Norway in April, conquering the two countries within 2 months. To circumvent the strong Maginot Line on the French border, Germany...
For me, the invasion of Norway and Denmark is impressive. Knowing that Denmark is a huge country, even though it's like not that big in the map, but it's still a huge country. It's full of snow. And next of it is Sweden, neutral Sweden, and Finland that might actually end up getting invaded by the Soviet Union. Yeah.
They then decided to invade Belgium, the Netherlands.
Yeah. Hitler used the element of element of surprise and speed. He surprising because the French left the, I don't know what you call that, Alps, some mountains in this part of France. They thought it's impossible to penetrate, so they're just gonna leave it. But Germany just straight up penetrated everything and took France like almost, how many, like a month or weeks? No, that's very quick.
And Luxembourg to blitzkrieg through the Ardennes and cut off Allied defences in the north. On May 10th, the Battle of France began, and in 2 weeks, the Benelux nations had already been deeply penetrated. Pushed to the sea, the surrounded British...
Yeah, they were saved over here. They were surrounded, British and some French. There was boats came to rescue them and brought them to England.
French and Belgian soldiers fiercely resisted the German assaults until June 4th, when the evacuation from Dunkirk was finally completed.
The evacuation of Dunkirk.
The next day, the Nazis started their general offensive through the Somme and Aisne rivers, decisively defeating Allied forces with their superior tanks and airplanes, and occupying Paris on June 14th. The ensuing collapse of the French army successfully terminated the campaign, and the Axis powers would go on to occupy France and
establish a Vichy France over here. I'm sorry, I know he's gonna say that, but hey, it's more Vichy. It's like a puppet state, but it's a Vichy.
Establish a puppet government in
Vichy. Yeah, there's a puppet. I knew it.
Led by Philippe Pétain. In July, the Germans then prepared to start a naval and air blockade of the British Isles. A battle for air supremacy over the islands ensued, and the Nazis would start night bombing operations on Britain with the objective of forcing them to surrender. The UK was now alone, under bombardment and suffering the threat of possible naval invasion. This was the darkest hour for the Allies.
So, surprisingly, England beaten Germany obviously because in this time period, United Kingdom has the strongest naval fleet, and there's like a English Channel, we all know that, and there's like a huge mountains over here. I don't know what the name, I don't know if it's a mountain, but hey, there's like a wall over here, so and it's hard to invade London, the UK. So yeah, but surprisingly, the Gallic Wars with Julius Caesar, was it Julius Caesar? He surprisingly got some part over here of United Kingdom. I don't know much about Roman history, so yeah, that's the only thing that I can say.
The Japanese knew the Battle of Britain would see large numbers of British forces leaving Asia to help the home front, leaving places like Hong Kong vulnerable to attack. Hong Kong remained a major trade route for foreign aid to China. Furthermore, since the start of World War II, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt had announced that he would revise the Neutrality Acts with a cash and carry policy that allowed the sale of military arms to China and the Allies, hoping that American support would be enough to stop Japan and Germany.
That is not enough, but we all know they were just provoked by Japan because of, the attack on Pearl Harbor. And yeah.
China in particular had already been receiving valuable American aid since the USS Panay incident, as no formal declaration of war had ever happened. But after the fall of France, although the US population was still definitely anti-war, FDR would intensify the naval buildup pushed with the Vincennes Acts and would begin to preemptively prepare for a war against the Nazis. Concurrently, the Japanese would be victorious.
Yes, they were provoked, but still they're still preparing, because since some point they can get provoked, and yeah, they're gonna join in
June with a minor offensive directed towards the capture of the cities of Yichang and Shaoyang, setting up an important airbase to intensify the bombardment operations in China and against the capital at Chongqing in particular. The Japanese would also allow German raiders operating in the Pacific during this period to resupply at Micronesia, which greatly increased tensions between Japan and the Allies. In the end, the problem of the British and American aid to China would force Japan to formalize its alliance with Germany and Italy with the signing of the Tripartite Pact in September, although it wouldn't join the war efforts, only
like oversimplified said, Nazi Germany, Italy, and Fascist Italy and Imperial Japan became best friends. They became best friends.
blockading by land the British and French concessions in China. It's with this layout that we leave you for now, but join us next week as we finally cover the rising tensions between Japan and the US, as well as the events that directly led to the start of the Pacific War. Make sure you're subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see the next video in the series. Please consider liking, commenting and
Okay, so that's the end. Looking at the map, Mongolia is a puppet state of the Soviet Union, and Soviet Union invaded Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, and later in World War II they're gonna invade Finland. And oh, am I? Yeah, they did, because they became like a Soviet. I don't know. Were they a puppet state? Oh yeah, maybe they were like a puppet state, because there's a flag with like the communist watermark in it. And yeah, we see, here we go, we have Germany invading Liechtenstein, Belgium, Netherlands, and whole France, and opening up Vichy, and Italy taking Albania, Utopia, and Somalia. Djibouti is here. I forgot what countries over here, but Libya, before the start of World War II, they already got Libya. So yeah, and for Japan, they got some part of China, because they got this, but not that much. But in the next episode, the 0.7, I gotta give Kings and Generals some love. We give them a like. Yeah, why Japan decided to attack America. So yeah, so guys, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I don't know when will be my next video. I'm just very busy. I'm very sorry. So yeah, thank you for watching. Goodbye.